With a spontaneous burst of energy, today I'm going to talk to you guys about the Federal Reserve interest rate cut situation. Okay, so obviously, as of recently, we've seen President Trump very advocative of cutting interest rates, trying to make the U.S. economy flourish. Okay, so cutting interest rates for a lot of people signals a very flourishing economy, and it makes sense, right? But if you understand basic macroeconomic theory, then you would know that cutting interest rates at this moment is not the wisest idea, okay? So pretty clearly Trump does not understand this, okay? But anyways, I'm going to tell you, trying to using independent thought, logic, with things I literally learned in my senior year of high school about why Trump cutting interest rates are not going to be, the best idea here. Sorry, I'm kind of whisper talking. It's like 1 a.m. But, so yeah, what we're going to be talking about today is why interest rate cuts are not good right now, okay? So what I'm going to be explaining to you about is the Federal Reserve. So what is the Federal Reserve? The Federal Reserve is the central bank of America. Very simple. For this video's purpose, the Federal Reserve controls the interest rate, okay? It can cut the interest rate or lower it, which will basically means that it's cheaper to borrow, so businesses can invest more, and there could be more consumer sensitive spending and things like that. So when it's cheaper to borrow, there's more aggregate demand, so real GDP goes up. Now, if you raise interest rates, it's more expensive to borrow. Consumer sensitive spending decreases because it's more expensive. Okay, so now aggregate demand decreases, and real GDP also decreases. Okay, so it's very simple. This is what we call monetary policy. Monetary policy controls the economy, it balances it out, and the Federal Reserve is the most important, the most significant bureaucratic institution in the U.S. government. There's no doubt about it, okay? And when Congress made it, its sole job was to stabilize the economy, okay? We learned about the aggregate demand, short-run aggregate supply, and long-run aggregate supply graph, okay? And basically what this graph tells you is the well-being of an entire economy, okay? So what happens is the long-run aggregate supply is at the point of full employment. Okay, so what is full employment? Full employment equals the natural rate of unemployment. So the natural rate of unemployment right now is around 4%. Okay, so the 4%, the Wall Street Journal just came out with an article about 2 days ago that says unemployment is at 4.1%. Okay, think about this. Despite all the tariffs, despite all the trade wars, despite all this drama, okay, that Trump is causing with the economy, the uncertainty, jobs are still getting filled, the economy is still doing well, stock market is booming, and unemployment is at 4.1%. Okay, so that's basically at full employment. Okay, that is basically what we call a macroeconomic equilibrium. Okay, so that is a long-run equilibrium. That is where the economy is stable. Okay, that is where the economy is stable. That is good, because if you have too hot of an economy, if you're producing too much, you will have inflation. If you have too cold of an economy, that's a made-up word. If your economy is not fully functioning well, if there's cyclical unemployment, if there's unemployment caused by a recession, then obviously you have a recession. So, what does this all have to do with these Fed interest rate cuts? Well, Trump wants Fed interest rate cuts because he wants to stimulate the economy, stimulate domestic growth, which is, there's it might work, but according to this graph, the aggregate demand. So what will happen is, if the Federal Reserve cuts the interest rates, what will happen is interest-sensitive spending and investment will increase. And what increases aggregate demand? Consumer spending, investment spending, government spending, and exports. Okay, so investment spending and consumer spending are going to increase. That means that aggregate demand increases. So if you look at this graph and you see aggregate demand shift right, it shifts right. Okay, it shifts right. That means that you are out of macroeconomic equilibrium. You are getting inflation. That is an inflationary gap. That is the definition of inflation. Okay? So what Trump is doing is he's basically turning us to 2022. And this is exactly what happened in 2022. Biden put so much money into the system that as soon as Americans were basically free, as soon as they were like, this COVID threat is no more, they went out and spent all their money causing demand pull inflation. Demand pull inflation, my bad. Demand pull inflation happened. So aggregate demand shifts right on this graph. This causes an inflationary gap, okay? That means inflation is bound to happen with interest rate cuts, okay? You don't want inflation. We don't want inflation. That will destabilize this economy. And the best part about this is that Trump believes that he is genuinely correct and that he wants to fire Jerome Powell. Now, Jerome Powell is probably the most objective man in the government right now. It is a shame that this man's job is on the line, because what he is doing for this economy, he is trying to stabilize it. The Europeans have already cut interest rates, and it's not looking good for them. He's trying to stabilize this economy. He doesn't know what the heck Trump is going to do next. No one does. That's why, it's a paradox, right? The stock market's going up. So what he thinks is, okay, why don't we leave it? Why don't we leave it? Don't fix anything that's not broken, right? Just leave it. And this is the best option, because when you are in macroeconomic equilibrium, you are long-term stably. It is what's best for the companies. And of course, Trump is going to say cut interest rates because politically that's what everyone wants. But in reality, there's things that are better for this economy. Okay? So here's the counter argument. The counter argument is that we need to cut interest rates because of the fact that many of our government bonds are expiring next year. So we need lower interest rates on those bonds so that we can pay them off, or we have less interest on those bonds in the future. Okay, so let's talk about this for a sec. The big beautiful bill just passed, okay? And a lot of the bond market has been very interesting lately. The big beautiful bill just passed, and now it is projected that, there's different projections, but anywhere from $3 trillion to like $5 trillion we're going to be more in debt to, okay? When you are in debt, you are enslaved to another country. Okay, because that country can basically say, I don't want to buy your debt anymore. Like, I don't want to, and it's honestly, like, I don't know what we're doing here, right? Like, we just keep on getting into debt, and we just pray that Japan or China buys our debt, okay? And, at what point? We are going to be closing at $40 trillion in debt. $40 trillion in debt. We're going to be closing in on that. Okay? That is insane. So, what could have Trump done? What could have Trump done differently that could have made these bonds have a lower interest on them? Okay? Instead of risking the well-being of the economy. Okay, so what he could have done is, obviously do Doge and cut government spending, but he could have raised taxes. And then if he has a surplus, Then he puts that surplus into paying off your debt. Okay, so now, yes, you might be saying, that is contractionary policy. That is going to kill our economy. Well, no, it's not necessarily going to kill our economy. It is going to slow it down. But do you know how a slowed down economy ramps back up? No. Is it? Monetary policy. Yes. So, if you want interest rates lowered, you do contractionary fiscal policy, decrease government spending, and increase tax revenue. That way, you put more of your tax revenue into your debt, right? You pay off that debt, and then the Federal Reserve decreases interest rates because it needs to stabilize the economy. It needs to reinvigorate that growth. So it decreases interest rates because of the stabilization of the economy. So your economy becomes stabilized, your bonds become cheaper, and then now you can pay off that interest easily. But now, because we have the big beautiful bill, we want to spend so much, get more into debt, now more crowding out, which is going to cause less investment from corporations. And then now, because you want to decrease interest rates, that is going to maybe stabilize the investment part, but now you're looking at massive inflation. I'm talking 2022 levels, because if the trade wars get worse, because remember, these tariffs, they're only like a 90-day, there's like a 90-day expiration after them. So the fall, we are going to see these tariffs come back. And what tariffs basically do is basically, if domestic industries are not like reinvigorated, basically you limit, or prices become higher because your prices don't drop, other prices raise. So according to comparative advantage, you might have taken a product from like a different country where it costs less, but now that product is more because of tariffs, you're going to take the product from your own country that costs more. So prices automatically rise, the price level rises, and then because the price level rises for companies, they're going to have to fire more people because they're under the stress of price level rises. So the unemployment unemployment increases. So now you're looking at hyperinflation with interest rate cuts. Okay, this is bad. So I just wanted to let you guys be aware about Trump's fight for these interest rate cuts are inherently bad. It is bad. I mean, this man went to war, and how does he not know that his economy will be doomed by them? I mean, it's honestly insane. The Fed Chair Jerome Powell, I mean, he's probably the best bureaucrat in the U.S. government as of right now, and Trump elected him. So you just see this shift of mindset, the shift of belief happen over time. And so, I mean, we will see what happens in the future, but hopefully Trump recognizes the fact that his economy is in a good place, even with tariffs, which is insane. But I mean, we will see what happens. But anyways, thank you guys so much for joining me on this video, and have a good day.